Welcome back everyone to part 2 of learning to paint a board gaming miniature. Last episode we took a Mansions of Madness Maniac and we got him to look something like this. In this video we're going to get it to look like this. We're basically adding a bit more detail. So with that said, let's move on. Let's check out the next few steps to get the miniature looking quite a bit better. Next we're going to apply a brown wash to the entire miniature. A wash is kind of like a very watered down paint with the consistency similar to an ink. These washes are pre-mixed products, so you can buy them separately, and basically the effect this gives is the opposite effect to dry brushing because it runs down into the crevices and darkens them. So apply this liberally to the entire miniature, and in a way it kind of emphasises the highlights done by the dry brushing and the areas that we picked out because it darkens everything else. Washes, in my opinion, are a must-have for the beginner painter. They make everything a lot easier. If you're not the best painter and you've gone a bit outside the lines, filled in a few crevices, these washes just go over there and fill all that in and make it look great. And they give a really nice shading effect. They do darken the miniature. Obviously in that video I applied it over the whole miniature, but you don't have to. It's up to you, but that's just how I do it. But washes, seriously guys, for the beginners, that they'll make your miniature look great like that. Really recommend them. In this step, I'm just going to apply some more flesh paint over the raised flesh areas. And I'm using a pretty thin coat so that some of the detail of the ink underneath still seeps through just a little bit. And this gives off a very smooth highlight for the skin. This next step I call lining a miniature. I basically pick out various parts of the miniature with a highlighted colour, but more or less just using thin strokes like I'm doing here on the shirt. This I think really brings the miniature to life a bit more after a wash has been applied, because washes can darken the miniature just a bit too much in my opinion, and this just helps lighten it up a bit. When you're painting detail like thin lines, you're really going to want the tip on the brush to be as fine pointed as possible. And one way you can get that is by putting the brush in your mouth and pulling it out after cleaning it with water and whatnot, and then you can get a bit of paint on there and just wipe a little bit off if need be, and try and maintain that point, and that's really going to help you out. And I know it sounds weird putting the paintbrush in your mouth, but you'll get used to the taste of paint, trust me. Next I will use the same sandy mix that I used earlier on the hair just to touch it up a little bit, because the brown ink, as you can see, because I used it over the whole miniature, it has darkened it a little bit too much. Okay, so the final step is just picking out the eyes and the buttons on the shirt. The buttons on the shirt I did a dark blue, and the eyes I did white, and I also put the pupils in with a black. Pupils are not necessary, I don't think, in miniatures. The only reason I did it on this one is because the eyes were so big. I just thought, I may as well. But it really isn't necessary. The only advice I can give you when doing this is really that you need both practice and a steady hand. And the best way to get a steady hand, I think, is to sort of put your elbows on the table like this and put your palms together. You will be holding the miniature in this hand, and you can sort of just get in there like that with the paintbrush. And that all forms a nice sort of structure so that you've got quite a steady hand. And that's my advice for getting a steady hand when you're doing that really fine detail like that. Other than that, that's it. That's the whole process. The miniature's now finished. The only thing I've done other than that is, and this is optional, this is why I'm throwing it in at the end here, you can seal the miniature, which is basically putting a finish over it. And this is done with a spray. It's just like undercoating the miniature, and you can spray this finish on, and you can get this finish in either a gloss or a matte, and I prefer matte finishes. I really think that gloss finishes can make the miniatures look a bit tacky. It can also make them lose a bit of detail in my opinion, but the matte finishes I think look fantastic once they're applied. So that'd be my recommendation to finish off your miniatures. And that's it. Your miniature's done. You've painted it. You can take those methods, put them into practice on your different miniatures and try different colour schemes. It's a lot of fun. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and I really hope you enjoyed painting. That's me out. I'll see you later. This episode has been brought to you by Board Game Bliss. Check out all their great games at boardgamebliss.com.